Hello and welcome back to Cotton Innovations Limited. In our next video series looking at design of experiments, we've been looking and discussing about these plastic containers, how we can weld this surface onto here using three primary factors, A, B and C being temperature, the heat that we use and the pressure, and how these surfaces will weld together. We've also discussed about a cup of tea, how to make a cup of tea, and looking at the interactions in that cup of tea to understand how to know which are the main factors, which factors have no effect. And in that we saw that the mug had no effect, or the cup of tea, the tea made in China had no effect, but sugar has a significant effect only when it is stirred. And no stirring, just adding sugar, does not make for a good cup of tea. And temperature likewise does not always make for a good cup of tea, because it takes so long for the tea to boil and you don't get the good flavours coming out if the water's too cold. So that's what we call interactions, how we build those interactions. But one of the most important things we need to understand is how to control your experiment. Lots of people do design of experiments, they get into a right mess with everything, and the reason being is they do not control their experiment. And you need to identify what are the factors that you're playing with, and what are the factors and the interactions that you need to lock in that experiment, and what is the output that you're trying to measure and how you're going to use that. Now, some of the factors are very small, some of the interactions are very small, and if you're not controlling your experiment, the noises, the issues within your experiment actually start to conflict with the factors, and then you get misleading results. So in the experiment we draw what's called a Cnx diagram. Some people call it a P diagram, or just some people call it a process diagram. We call it a Cnx diagram. So the Cnx, and the C stands for the controls, the N stands for the noises, and the X is for the inputs of your experiment. And you need to know what those are. If you don't control those, the factors A, B and C may get dwarfed, so the interaction of AB, AC and BC will not actually be seen. And the third way interaction, A, B and C, could well be lost within that experiment. That's called confounding, because your experiment is so mixed up with the noises. So how do we do that? Well, a simple tool that can be very useful is called the Cnx diagram. So in the Cnx diagram, what we have are A, B and C. These are the three factors that we have chosen to use in our experiment. They're the factors that we're going to adjust. They're the factors that we're going to set as a high, set as a low, or have as a midpoint if we're using midpoint or center point experiments. Then we need to think about the noises. So the noises are really dangerous. The noises are things that are natural sources of variation. So the variation which you cannot control. So what do I mean by that? You can't control the temperature of the day, and it might be very important that your experiment is very temperature sensitive, so morning and evening you get a different response. Humidity might be a noise that you can't respond, and your experiment is sensitive to it. Batch to batch variation of components, the different types of operators that you're using, the different ways of working, the different materials they use, all those things are called noises, and these noises will drive my experiment. And what I've got to make sure is I've understood every one of those noises. What I then need to do is I then need to think about my controls. Now, what do I mean by my controls? The controls are the things that I will put in place to limit the effect of the noise. I can never take the noise away, but I can limit its effect. So if temperature is an issue, I will do it all in the morning. If humidity is a problem, I will do it all in that same humidity period. I won't do it across the day. So for example, in some countries, you'll find it's very wet in the morning, it's very dry in the afternoon. Other days, other places, you might find the humidity builds throughout the whole day. So I need to make sure that I'm controlling that humidity. I need to make sure that the operators that I'm using are trained and they're all doing the same thing. And we would call that an SOP, or a standard operating procedure, or a one-point lesson, or a work instruction. We need to make sure that everybody's doing the same thing. So for every one of my noises, I must have a control, and that control must be rigidly locked. So I'm going to make sure all my materials are from one batch. I'm going to make sure all of my factors that I want to look at are coming from one machine. I'm going to look at one operator to set it up. I'm going to look at one shift. I'm going to try do everything as much as I can to do it by one. The other thing I need to think about then is my output. What are the outputs that I'm going to generate from my experiment? So my output could be a force, it could be a quality, so a percentage, a yield, or it could be an attribute that I want to look at. Now this is a tricky one because I need to convert my attribute back to a number, because DoE cannot work with good, bad, right, wrong. You need to have numbers. So this is my experiment. This is what I'm going to do. Now what will happen during my experiment if I don't mandate that these controls are locked? These noises will be unlocked, and those noises will then start to, let's change my colour on my pen. These noises, instead of being matched with a control, will start becoming an input. And once those noises become inputs, the only way I have of controlling this process is to readjust A, B, and C. And now everything gets confounded and everything gets mixed up. So noises, need to understand what those are. Natural sources of variation, need to control those. Controls, documents, procedures, processes, training, people, how we set that experiment up, how we run it, and every control must have a noise that it's locking, and every noise must be locked with a control. And then I'm left then with my A, B, and C, my 3 factors, my 4 factors, whatever it is I'm looking to drive, and then this is what I'm going to get as my output. When you set up your experiment like this, you'll always have really great results. You'll be able to see the output, you'll be able to see the main effects, you'll be able to control that process. So if you're looking at creating a DoE and you need help looking at your noises, looking at creating a Cnx diagram, please reach out to us at Cotton Innovations. We would love to help you, walk you through design of experiments, help you build that design of experiment, help you run it. Details are on the screen. Reach out to us if you'd like us to run it for you, or you'd like some more training on how to do a DoE. Thank you so much for watching, and we wish you all the best for your DoE and look forward to contacting you. Take care now and speak soon. Bye bye now.